Welcome back, everybody. It's Zach here, bringing us another fantasy football video. Instead of going over some wide receivers that I'd be looking to target in trades ahead of the fantasy playoffs, sort of splitting this into two groups, guys that I think are really set up for a really solid end to the fantasy football regular season, and then some guys that I think are really set up for a really great stretch during the fantasy playoffs. We're at that point in the year where you either got to win out to make the playoffs, or you're in the playoffs and you really want to make sure that you're doing your best to optimize your roster. And these are guys that can really help you do that, regardless of the situation you're in there. So hopefully you guys find this helpful. Of course, there's going to be nuance and everything to anything we do here. So if you guys do have any specific trade questions, just let me know in the comments below. I'll be happy to give you guys some feedback and input there. And hopefully you guys enjoy. That being said, let's just get into it. A lot of players to talk about. So starting off with some receivers that I think are really set up for a great stretch over the next 3 weeks here. Starting with the Chargers wide receivers, both Quentin Johnston and Ladd McConkey. They get Baltimore, Atlanta, and Kansas City over the next 3 weeks. Believe it or not, they're also both wide receiver ones over the last 5 weeks. So they've been absolutely phenomenal since the Chargers came out of their bye. Baltimore and Atlanta are awesome matchups for opposing wide receivers. Kansas City, not so much, but at least over the next 2 weeks, I think both Quentin Johnston and Ladd McConkey are going to be really solid starting options for us and are guys that I'll feel really confident throwing into my lineup as like a wide receiver too. So I think both those guys, they're pretty cheap right now, and they're guys that I feel really good about starting. Calvin Ridley, he's pretty much a must start right now with how much volume he's getting, but he gets Houston, Washington, and Jacksonville over the next 3 weeks. A fantastic stretch there. I think Ridley's a guy that, again, he's been just like consistently undervalued this entire season, but he's getting like a 30-40% target share in Tennessee right now. I know Nick Westbrook-Akine had the big game last week, but Ridley is still the main target there. I think he's a guy you can play as a solid wide receiver too every single week. And then George Pickens gets Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Cleveland over the next 3 weeks. Believe it or not, Pickens is third in the NFL in receiving yards right now. He's playing phenomenal with Russell Wilson. Touchdown volume's way up there with Russ playing, and this is a great stretch here for Pittsburgh, who's going to play some mediocre to bad defenses over the next 3 weeks, and Pickens could be a really solid, probably fringe top 5 wide receiver over the next 3 weeks. Moving on to some receivers here that are going to be really good during the fantasy playoffs for you. I've got to highlight Calvin Ridley again. He gets Cincinnati, Indianapolis, and Jacksonville. Honestly, if you told me Calvin Ridley's a top 10 wide receiver the entire rest of the season, I'd believe it. The setup there is phenomenal for him. The target share is there. The matchups are there. This is a team that's not going to be winning a lot of games. They'll be playing from behind, so there's a lot of volume. I think Ridley's a guy that we just got to be locking in our lineups every single week going forward. Courtland Sutton gets Indianapolis, the Chargers, and Cincinnati. The Broncos are trending up on offense right now. They're playing phenomenal. Sutton over the last 4 weeks has been fantastic. I know he goosed against the Saints like 5 weeks ago. Since then, he's been a wide receiver 2 or better every single week. He's playing really, really solid football right now. Didn't score last week, but was still good for fantasy. There's obviously a lot of touchdown upside with a guy in Sutton who does seem to have a nose for the end zone. Sutton's a guy we can play in the fantasy playoffs for sure. And again, he's not very cheap. He's not very expensive. He's not somebody that people look at as like a high value asset, but he's been really good and he should get even better over the fantasy playoffs. And then if you really want to go deeper down here, Christian Watson gets Seattle, New Orleans, and Minnesota over the final 3 weeks of the fantasy football season. Honestly, this is an opportunity here for him to be phenomenal. Jayden Reed's really sort of phased out of the offense. He's only had more than a 20% target share twice this season, believe it or not. And Seattle, New Orleans, Minnesota, 3 straight really plus matchups for Watson. We just saw Watson come back with 4 for 150 against a really tough Chicago secondary. This is a team in Green Bay that's going to have to air it out a ton. Christian Watson, we've seen the talent. We know it's there. If everything just comes together for him, Christian Watson could be a guy that goes out there and puts up a top 5 wide receiver stretch over those 3 weeks. And we could look back on Christian Watson in the offseason as the reason a lot of people won their championships. And he's on waivers in some leagues right now. He's on the bottom of a lot of benches. Watson's the guy that I think could be really good down the stretch here and somebody that I do want on my roster right now. So that'll do it for the wide receivers that I'd be looking to trade for ahead of the fantasy football playoffs. Up next, I'll be closing the series out with some tight end trade targets, guys that I think are really poised for a great end to the fantasy football regular season or really great playoff setups there. So stay tuned for that video. That one will also come out today. Of course, if you guys missed the running back or the quarterback video, highly recommend you guys go watch those ones as well. If you guys have any specific questions, just let me know in the comments. I love interacting with you guys there. Other than that, up next we'll go over starts and sits later on in the week as well, so make sure you guys stay tuned for that. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, that way you don't miss any of the future content. And then if you did make it this far in the video, just help me out, give me a thumbs up. It helps me out with everything and tells me know that I'm doing a good job and all that. So yeah, appreciate you guys, and I'll catch you with the next one. Peace. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.